Thanks everyone for joining us today. I am talking to Paul Sinclair, editor of SDE, superdeluxeedition.com. And I really just want to get right to it. March 15th, 2011 shows that that's when your account at SDE was created. I assume that's the beginning of SDE.
It is, yeah, correct.
And so can you just tell us what was the inspiration for SDE and what was it like to get it up and running and to create it?
It was really just started as a hobby, if I'm honest. I was working as a graphic designer, sort of working in magazines and corporate graphic design, stuff like that. And feeling a little bit. I was 40 at the time. I just turned 40. So in early 2011, I was 41, I think. And yeah, and I wouldn't say it was a midlife crisis or anything, but I was kind of wondering, what my later years, sort of my 40s and 50s, what I was going to do, how much I was enjoying my work and all that kind of stuff. And so I just started SDE as a bit of a hobby, really. Web 2.0, whatever you want to call it, was a kind of big deal where people could create content online without having to employ developers and coders. WordPress had become a big deal and all the rest
Right.
of it. So suddenly, unlike before, it was possible, because when I was a graphic designer, I'd worked on websites in corporate environments and stuff. But suddenly you could do everything yourself if you had a small set of skills. I had the graphic design skills. I'd done some video editing when I was in the 1990s, working in central London. And so I had a few skills which I knew I could put to good use. But I never had any coding skills, but the necessity to do coding kind of disappeared.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So gave me the ability to do it. And yeah, I just started a fairly simple WordPress based website, which doesn't actually look anything like how it looks today. But
So you must have had a thing for super deluxe editions of albums.
um,
Or
I mean,
why did you choose to begin reviewing them?
because really, I kind of love music, and I love physical music, and I love buying products, and that stemmed from being a teenager in the 1980s. That stemmed from buying poster sleeve 7 inches, cassette singles, 12 inches,
Yeah,
um,
totally.
CD singles. And so I was always a fan of the music, but I was also a fan of limited edition product or interesting products.
Mhm.
And the singles market had kind of died a slow death in the UK. So suddenly, instead of buying CD1 and CD2 and a 7 inch and a 12 inch and a cassette, whatever, there was nothing to buy. So I found that very disappointing. So, but obviously the record companies turned to albums, didn't they? So first of all, you had the deluxe edition, which was like a 2 CD set. They sort of happened in the early noughties, I think. And
I
then
remember that, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then, well, because in the 80s, or the late 80s, early 90s, you had the expanded CD, which was still a 1 CD. Then it turned into the deluxe edition with 2 CDs. But then the big thing was the super deluxe edition, and where it was a multi-disc set, 3, 4, 5, whatever.
Mhm.
And yeah, I can't remember. There wasn't a specific box set that sort of triggered a kind of light bulb or anything. But I'd already started Super Deluxe Edition, but the 3 Pink Floyd immersion box sets, the Wish You Were Here and Dark Side of the Moon, and then later The Wall, they were the ones that felt to me like the start of some kind of new era of sort of marketing for albums and box sets. So that happened in 2011. So that kind of coincided with the beginning of SDE.
So what is it like to make SDE happen? What is a day like for you?
Well, no 2 days are the same, really, which is one of the nice things about it. I mean, I could have an interview scheduled where I'm talking to an artist, so if I've got an interview scheduled at 2 o'clock, I'm probably spending a lot of the morning thinking about that, not being able to think about anything else because I'm trying to prepare for it and ask hopefully some intelligent questions. But then, you know, I could be just simply, I get press releases, you know, via email about new things coming out. So I might be preparing some content, just some news stories. I might be in the middle of writing a review. I might be going out to meet some friends or associates in the industry to talk about something. You know, it could be, it's probably a mixture of all of those things is an average day for me and running SDE.
How much music do you listen to?
I mean, a fair amount, maybe not as much as people might think, because when you're writing content or editing an interview or listening to an audio recording to edit the interview down, you know, you can't have music blasting away in the background because it's takes away all your concentration. But
I completely
um,
relate.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, I'm probably like you and, you know, your viewers and my readers in that I buy more than I can listen to. You know, I think
Correct.
that's a common trait. But I don't. I
I
mean,
have a
there's always
stack I need to get to.
yeah, exactly. But there's always that thing that, you know, one day, you know, at the end of the rainbow or over the horizon or whatever, you will sit down and you'll have the time to listen to all this great music. And, you know, it remains to be seen whether that will happen. But
That's the dream.
I know.
Okay, so can you tell us about creating the surround series? Like, where did that idea come from?
Yeah, that came from because the SDE shop part of Super Deluxe Edition started in 2016, I think it was. And that had really, I started the shop just so I think I was doing this Sam Brown box set. I think that was what made me start the shop, because I was working with Sam Brown and I was working with Caroline International at Universal, and we put together this box set that I curated and put together. And I got in contact with Sam and sort of started to get to know her a little bit. And she said she'd sign the boxes if I wanted to. So I needed a way to sell direct to the public. So that's why I started the SDE shop. But for years,
Wow.
it kind of just chugged along and didn't really do that much. It kind of every now and again I would do something with it. But we did some T-shirts, things like this. Sold out, unfortunately. And we did you know, we did some books and fanzine type booklets and stuff like that. So we have done some nice stuff over the years. But I did a few kind of collaborations with labels where you know, BMG and people like that, where you would do a bonus CD single, or you would do we had some Paul Young signed vinyl and things like that. And the same thing happened with Tears for Fears with the Tipping Point, you see. So Concord, you know, my history with Tears for Fears goes back all the way to sort of 2013 with the Hurting box set, you see. Because a friend of mine, Steve Hammonds, he's a consultant for Universal and he puts together a lot of great packages. And I got to know Steve and he kind of brought me in a little bit on Tears for Fears and said, would you like to write the sleeve notes? Would you like to kind of help put it together? So that was very nice of him. So I worked on all three Tears for Fears box sets, the 80s albums, and I wrote the sleeve notes and sort of helped put them together. So I had a bit of a relationship with Tears for Fears, you know, to a degree, and certainly people knew that, you know, I had an audience that liked Tears for Fears, I guess. So
Right.
I can't remember who got in touch with who, but with Concord, they were planning the Tipping Point, the new album, and said, you know, would you be interested in doing an SD CD with some bonus tracks? So we did that in kind of, can't remember when it was, in October of the year before the album came out. I
Right.
think that must have been October 2020, something like that. And then we sold out of those CDs very quickly because we had a limited allocation, and it was ages till the album was coming out. It was like February the following year.
Right.
So I just said to them, you know, is there anything else we can do? And they were planning to talk to Stephen Wilson about an Atmos mix because he'd done all the 5.1 mixes of songs and the Seeds of Love,
Right.
and it just grew out of that. It was kind of like, well, you're going to get an Atmos mix done probably. You know, why don't we consider putting that on as a physical product? And that's how the number one in the series, Tipping Point, came about.
Oh, I
And that
remember. I remember Tipping Point, man. That lit a fire.
I know. So that inadvertently led to, I mean, I didn't call it, it's a bit like Star Wars or something. It wasn't called
You had to
A
go
New
back.
Hope. It wasn't called A New Hope at the beginning, but
Right.
uh, I went back and caught, we did the slip cases so it would work out. But I think I must have had the idea on the third one or something to make it a series.
Yeah, those
So
slip cases that I'm terrified of bending.
I know I keep thinking I need to do a video on how to sort out your slipcase without bending it, because there is a technique involved, which I've got a good technique. I have to share that with everyone at some point.
I would love to see it. I would love to see it. All right. So do you love multi-channel music? I see what looks like a surround system right behind you.
Yeah, I do. That's one of my sort of side speakers or whatever you call them. But
Hmm.
I mean, I've got in this room here, I've got I can't swivel the camera around because it's a mess, but I've got a 7.1.2 setup. So I've
Nice.
got, reasonable. I'm only missing two rear ceiling speakers, and I'd have the sort of 7.1.4, which is probably about as big as anyone would go
Go
in a
for
home.
it. Go for it. You need those rear heights.
Yeah, I am actually going to do that. I'm planning to do that, but
Awesome.
because this is my office, I'm not going to annoy everyone by having cables all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, the answer to your question is yeah. I mean, I do love it. I wouldn't really do this series without being passionate about it myself.
How did you catch that bug?
I think it was. I thought you'd ask me this question. I was having a think about it.
Good.
It must have been just through cinema, through DVDs and, surround sound. And I mean, I was buying DVDs in the late 90s and the early 2000s when I got a bit obsessive and was buying kind of imports from Region 1 imports from America and trying to get the one that has all the best bonus content and has DTS surround instead of Dolby Digital, or
Right.
I got really into all that kind of stuff, and I had a kind of 5.1 set up at home in my front room, so I had the sort of center speaker under the telly. I had, four speakers, so I had a setup and I was enjoying watching movies, and then I got into kind of DVD audios and super audio CDs, when when the industry was trying to push them because they were trying to sell new product, and it kind of, I bought things like DTS CDs and stuff like that. So I was quite into it. I wouldn't say I was obsessively buying everything because I didn't have that much money in those days, so I was
Right.
quite limited in what I would just buy things that I liked. Like I bought, Nothing Like the Sun, Sting, I bought that one, and I bought Band on the Run and stuff like that. There was a DTS CD of that. So
Those are collector's items now,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Although
especially Band on the Run if it has the opening 3 notes.
I know
Like,
that's well, my one doesn't. It's the one that's
oh
cut
no.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still on my list to sort of get the proper one. Although maybe I'm sure Paul McCartney's done an Atmos mix of Band on the Run, so maybe we'll see that
I
sometime soon.
actually had a friend mail me theirs and I enjoyed it for a few days and then mailed it back. And I really love doing that with friends where we just kind of do like an exchange library together. Kind of
Yeah,
helps soften the blow of the cost.
yeah, that's a good idea. Very good idea.
And then you get to like, share your views together.
Trouble is,
Um,
I don't have that many friends that have all the kit and the setup and all that. I mean, everyone thinks I'm a weirdo with all this stuff, I think.
well, that's what Life in Surround was all about. It was about reaching out and finding friends and realizing like there's thousands of people that love it too. So
Yeah,
to take
yeah,
kind of an inherently lonely experience and make it a social one. So
yeah. No,
I'm happy that it's really, hit that mark.
no. I said, as I said to you earlier before you started this officially, I'm a big fan of your channel. So congratulations on building it up.
Well, I'm humbled. So how many more titles are planned in the Surround series, like at the moment? Like,
Limitless. It's going to go on forever.
oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, there's
But
no.
like,
Well, there's no. There's definitely. Well, there's.
how many are in preparation right now?
Well, the thing is, one thing about working with the music industry is you learn a lot about how record companies operate, the complexity of the people internally that make decisions. There's never one person you're talking to that can say yes or no to any single question, whether it's, you know, whether it's can we do this product, or if we do this product, what can we put this content on it. It's always different people, multiple people, you know, stakeholders all over the place. And so it's you know, it's very, very complicated and, you know, time consuming. And you have to be quite patient to you know, to wait for people to come back to you, and, you know, all the rest of it. So so it's kind of a weird situation, because there's not, I mean, even now looking into the next 6 months, there's a number of things that are quite likely to happen, but I can honestly say to you, nothing is 100% definite, you know.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense. Like, you have a lot of prospects going, and they're gonna come to fruition when they do.
exactly. And everyone, the thing is, everyone at a record label is very, very busy. Everyone's got a million things to do. You know, it's a, you know, the physical world has been shrinking in terms of the physical media of
Yeah,
music.
right.
So, you know, so headcounts in businesses are shrinking, and there's less people to do jobs, and everyone's working harder than ever. So I have to, you know, I have to acknowledge that, and remember that, really, and not, and so my surround series is, you know, it's very high in my own personal priorities, but it's not always going to be that high in, you know, Bob, who's doing a million other things. And, you know, so
Yeah.
so that the reality is, I mean, I'm reasonably confident, you know, there's lots of good things coming up in the next 6 months, but you know, I can't really give you kind of figures or numbers or promises or anything like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how are titles chosen? Does that start with you, or like you said with Tears for Fears, it started actually with their label, which congratulations to them
Yeah.
for thinking
It,
that way.
thank you. Yeah, it can vary, I think. I mean, a lot of people give me suggestions, you know, and I've got, you know, there's loads of things I love that I would love to do, but there's a million reasons why you could never do it. I mean, if you think of, I don't know, Eurythmics, for instance, as a band. I mean, Eurythmics in surround, in Atmos would be amazing, but um, you know, for reasons that are hard to understand, you know, that I think probably to do with the band as maybe as much as the record label, but, you know, for whatever reason, there hasn't been any reissues, for not significantly good ones, not for at least 20 years anyway. So so that there's not really much point me going on knocking on the door going, hey, do you fancy doing Savage in Atmos? Because, you know, it's obvious that the answer isn't going to be yes, because they just haven't even done the basics, never mind get on to, you know, doing surround sound. So but I mean, broadly speaking, I wouldn't really do an album or an artist that I didn't have a bit of a passion for and interest in, you know.
Sure.
There might be one or two exceptions. I mean, I'm not a massive Orbital fan, for instance, but that got suggested to me, Orbital, and I listened to the album and loved it and said, okay, let's do it, you know, something a bit different, interesting, new album, electronic. So that actually turned out quite well. So I'm kind of learning as well, and it's opening my eyes to artists maybe that, you know, I wouldn't naturally think of doing.
So maybe we could take one of the titles in the series as an example. ABC Lexicon of Love is actually the current one, and it's available. Hasn't sold out yet, which is nice.
We've got about 200 of these left, so, you know, get them
Okay.
one.
Yeah, right. It sounds incredible. That I heard it yesterday in Atmos, just thundering Atmos, and oh my gosh, those
Yeah,
tones are just so pure.
Stephen Wilson has done an incredible job on that. I mean, all the channels are being utilized, aren't they?
Very, very cool. So, how was that album chosen, and what was it like obtaining permission? Was there artist input or label input or your input? Just how does that process work?
Okay. This is an example of one where there was already a reissue campaign planned for it. So Universal were going to do the 40th anniversary edition.
Perfect.
and I heard about it through, you know, back channels or whatever. And Darrell Easley, the brilliant writer Darrell Easley, who's got a relationship with Martin Fry that goes back quite a while. Darrell Easley was kind of curating it and helping to put it together. And actually, what the really curious thing about that was, I heard that they were going to put the Blu-ray in the vinyl box set, the 4 LP vinyl box set. So I knew there was going to be an Atmos mix from the get-go, you know. So
Nice.
so I, you know, I've got some great relationships with some great people at Universal, and so I put forward the suggestion that, you know, you not everyone is necessarily going to want to spend £100 on a 4 LP vinyl box set to get a Blu-ray.
You just made so many people happy saying that. That is a huge, like, pain point, you know, a
Yeah,
passionate topic for surround lovers, particularly to have a surround title locked in a very expensive set.
exactly. And we all know that that does happen with some, never mind £100. There's some sort of 200, 300.
300 and on up now.
I know. So it is annoying when that happens. But so anyway, you know, by this point, you know, we'd done kind of, you know, I don't know, we'd done the hurting, or the hurting was fairly, you know, we've done a few things with Universal. We did X Propaganda, we did Tubular Bells. So, you know, so I was a kind of, hopefully anyway, I'm a sort of trusted partner, you know, in terms of they understand what I'm doing. I've demonstrated that I can sell product and all that. So I'm not just some guy coming out of the blue going, let's do this.
Mhm.
So anyway, so I suggested it to them, and they were open to the idea, and we had to get band approval. Martin Fry had to approve the idea. There was some delays with that reissue, because I think it was supposed to come out last year, and it kept getting delayed, and it was like there was literally like about 6 months where I was sort of hanging on a string, wondering if I was going to be a yes or a no.
Can you offer any teasers or any, like, juicy hints? I have a friend who will kill me if I don't ask. Like, "Can you tell us anything you're not supposed to tell us?" That's what he wanted that's what he
But if
wanted to
I'm
hear.
not supposed to tell you it, then I mean, thing
Well,
is, I can't.
any juicy hints, I guess
I
that's
can't.
what.
I mean, all I will say is, the thing is, I can't start breaking confidences, because
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that can sort of jeopardize future projects. But
Totally.
all I will say is, you know, there's going to be, you know, potentially some really great, exciting titles that I know people are going to love, and you know, I'm chomping at the bit as much to tell people about things as, you know, people are to sort of, you know, ask me or find out what's going on. So um so yeah, I mean, I think, you know, all being well, I think the second half of this year, we're going to be, you know, fingers crossed, we're going to be kind of tripping over ourselves with great releases, you know. In fact, what may happen is, you know, I know people like, and I like it as well, you know, the sort of 2 week pre-order window thing.
Right.
So it's a good way of doing it. But the only problem with that is, you know, it creates a buffer, you know, where you've got to wait, you got to do the 2 week pre-order window, and then you've got to kind of take a, you kind of have this period of time where you can't really do anything else for a while,
But
and
that
it,
lowers your risk by knowing going into
well, it does,
production.
and
Right, yeah, yeah.
it lowers my risk, and it means that people don't miss out, you know. That's, so there's loads of positives about that, but the trouble is, you can't, it's not always open for me to do that. And you know, there's production schedules, there's sometimes, you know, sometimes you're stepping into, especially if there's other products, like ABC, for instance, there was other products, Tubular Bells, there's other products, you know, you're working to a timetable that exists. You're not saying, this is the time I need, please give it to me, because they're going to go, well, no, you know, this is the time, this is the schedule, you've got to stick to this schedule. So there's not always flexibility. Like, for example, yeah, I mean, ABC is a good example of that. We had to commit to a number on ABC because of just various reasons. So
Sure.
so that's, you know, that's why with ABC it was 5,000. And but I think that worked out okay, because
Yeah, you only have 200 left.
yeah, we've nearly sold out, so that's nice. I mean, I'm always slightly worried we're going to have 1,500 left over or something, but
Anybody who's even remotely a fan of that album or that group is gonna just be in heaven. Like, at least if they have an Atmos setup, that's the only mix I've been able to hear so far.
well, everyone's been going on about how good the instrumental mix is as well, and
Yeah,
I
I'm
I
hearing
would
that as well.
agree with that. And the good thing about that is you don't have to have surround sound. You can just, as long as you've got a Blu-ray player and 2 speakers,
Yeah.
you can enjoy the instrumental mix, which has never been released on anything other than the Blu-ray. So that's another good. But I do agree with you. It's an amazing product, even if I do say so myself. I'm really pleased we managed to get that one out.
So now that we're quite a few titles into the surround series, it gives me the sense that like anything, any kind of title could come out. And that's an incredibly exciting thing. There are labels that I love, but the content is like, it's a niche. And like so you know what not to expect. And it just feels like just anything like from my childhood or from a brand new artist who, is really just doing great things. Any
Yeah.
any kind of genre, can people kind of expect certain genres to be more likely?
Um, I mean, I don't know really. It kind of, it's always mainly based around stuff I like, So it's my own person. I mean, when I started SDE, all I wrote about was stuff I liked,
Sure. I can
Kate,
relate.
yeah, Kate Bush, Paul McCartney, Duran, whatever. Neil Young, David Bowie. I've got quite broad taste, but it's all in the sort of. I'm not really into jazz or classical music particularly, so it's very
Yeah.
rock based. I mean, that's probably obvious. But so it's. I mean, I would never have thought we'd get to do an album as big and as iconic as Tubular Bells, for instance. I would have always thought, if someone had said to me a year ago, I would have always thought, well, that's a bit too big. No one will ever let us do that. Whatever. But I mean,
Never say never.
we ticked that one off. So, I mean, the main constraints are just to do with the giant size of record companies, and and they're so big now, and they span territories, America, Europe, UK, whatever. So sometimes it's to do with rights and who owns the rights, or where the artist was signed.
Well,
um
I certainly wish you all the best with like any album that is your brainchild and would just blow your mind and therefore blow the minds of those with similar tastes. I wish you all the success with just like getting yeses, whenever you want them.
yeah, well, I mean, the goal at the moment is to try and open as many doors as we can, and then
Yeah.
the more doors that are open, the more the possibilities increase.
Well, you're
And
showing that physical media is not dead. These surround series titles are selling out, and you're even reprinting some of them.
well, yeah, I mean,
And I
I
think the
know.
buzz is only beginning. I mean, I think this is only the beginning.
I mean, the thing that's interesting is that the industry, certainly Universal, Universal Music had quite a good go at trying to promote high resolution audio. I mean, it says it on the boxes, doesn't it? High fidelity pure audio. That was a Universal initiative,
Right.
and it kind of, for whatever reason, frustratingly, it didn't really work out. Who knows why? But so it felt like that was a kind of last gasp saloon, didn't it? Like
It did.
once that was over, it's kind of like it's never going to happen. But I think Dolby Atmos, Apple getting behind Atmos, just having a new buzzword, the fact that people can listen to it on headphones as well. A few things came together to that, fortuitously, really, that kind of meant people were interested in surround sound again.
Is
And
every
people,
surround series title going to have Atmos or are other formats possible? Like what
it
about a
has.
killer 5.1 mix?
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to that. I mean, everyone has had an Atmos mix so far, and but arguably, if there wasn't one, but there was a great 5.1 title was sat on a shelf for 20 years and doing nothing,
Oh, I
then
know of a very famous, awesome mixing engineer who has a hard drive full of
yeah.
5.1s that he always does, and the artist doesn't always, push it forward.
Yeah, I mean, I would never rule anything out, but the trouble is, if there's something that's kind of sat on a shelf unreleased for 20 years, there's normally a reason why, and whether that the reason has gone away now and suddenly you can do it is another
You
question,
never really know though, like, Mary Fall a couple of years ago put out her From the Dark Side of the Moon 5.1 mix. Bob
Yeah,
Clearmountain had done it just because he, did the stereo mix and he always does a 5.1, and, the label didn't greenlight pushing that forward at the time. But later on, her friend and producer mentioned that he found the files for it on his hard drive, and he played it for her in the living room, and she fell in love and, like, took the impetus herself to put it out. Like, From the Dark Side of the Moon would have been a perfect surround series,
yeah,
title,
no, I
and
agree with that. It's funny you mentioned that because I did actually have a conversation with her about that title, and
yeah, so now you're giving people an opportunity, like, it can happen.
yeah, I mean, it's
That mix was just sitting there, and, it was kind of this magical, mysterious set of circumstances that brought it to be.
yeah. Well, if anyone's got a brilliant 5.1 mix of their album that no one has ever released, then get in touch with me because obviously
Okay.
I'd be interested.
Yes, please do. All right, so we have about 1.5 minutes for this meeting left. Are there final thoughts that you would like to convey to um, your customers and your followers?
Um, well, I guess I'd just like to say thanks for all the support. Thank you to you, Mike, and everyone. I know you're a member of the Quadraphonic Quad Forum, and everyone there has been so enthusiastic about what we've been doing. So really, just kind of thanks for all the support, and we hope to. I hope to bring you more great titles that people will enjoy in the near future.
Oh man, fills my heart with joy. Well, yeah, and thank you for the surround series, and particularly that it's simply affordable. Like, I appreciate CD Blu-ray combos, or the standalone Blu-ray is awesome too. It's just, it gives people the option not to have to buy the mega box set all the time.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that was always that was always in my mind that you don't want to do something that's too expensive.
And exclusive, like,
Yeah,
expensive is great for those interested, and that it's possible for them, but it shouldn't be mandatory. So really, from the bottom of my heart, and I know I speak for a lot of people, thank you for doing that.
no, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, and thanks everyone else for watching, and that'll wrap for now. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Mike.